I know you gonna dig this.
Get funky with me.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing today? Here I am in Los Angeles, not too far from downtown. I'm in an area called Koreatown, and for today's video, it was very, very difficult to find parking in this area. There's a lot of cars, some pieces of cars too on the street here. So a lot of this video will be me talking as usual, but there's only one location I'm going to. It's straight ahead. And I'm going to tell you what happened in this house straight ahead. Now, if you're familiar with the band Koreatown, you know that the lead singer passed away earlier this year, Seth Binzer, aka Shifty Shellshock. Now, you may not be familiar with Koreatown. Maybe like, who? Because they were big for a while. And that, I mean, no disrespect to Koreatown when I say you may not have heard of them, because many bands you may not have heard of. Big bands, smaller bands. The third single from their debut album was one of the biggest songs of the early 2000s, and still to this day is a huge song. Like, you hear it all the time. I'm going to play you a little guitar part from it, if I can, right here. You recognize that. The song is called Butterfly. That was their big, huge smash hit. Now that guitar part actually is a sample, and it's a sample from the Red Hot Chili Peppers from a song called Pretty Little Ditty, which is on Mother's Milk. That's the Red Hot Chili Peppers album. So that famous guitar riff you hear in that song wasn't theirs, it was a sample. But they were a hip hop, rock band, new metal, so that's kind of, you sample, that's what happens, that's sampling is something that's done. But what's interesting about it is they also opened for Red Hot Chili Peppers at one point. And so yeah, that was on Mother's Milk, that sample, Pretty Little Ditty. So I think that was their first Red Hot Chili Peppers album. I think this was their first album they did with John, not with Hillel Slovak, their original guitarist. I think Mother's Milk was the first one. So that's John on the guitar there, which is pretty cool. Let's walk across the street here. So that song was everywhere. It was actually the third single from their debut album, from Koreatown's debut album. The record company released two. They didn't really go anywhere. And the album was selling in the thousands. Butterfly was released. And that song catapulted them to stardom. And the album sold into the millions. So let me tell you a little bit about Seth. He was born here in Los Angeles. His parents were both artists, I believe. And his family did move to Boston at one point, but then they moved back here to Los Angeles. And he began writing rhymes, rapping, and he immersed himself in the West Coast hip-hop scene, which is huge here, and he became a graffiti artist. So he started forming little crews, little groups and stuff, and it was there that he became friends with Scott Conn, James Conn's son, the Alchemist, who's excuse me, I got interrupted there. So he became friends with Scott Conn, the Alchemist, Scott Conn, son of James Conn, who was a burgeoning musician as well at the time, and the Alchemist, who is a producer, DJ, and they formed a band called the Hooligans, with a Z on the end, a Z, I should say, is a Canadian, and he was the band's hype man. Now, Koreatown was formed, and that's kind of where he kind of found his calling. He met the co-founder, whose name is Mazur, and they began performing under the name the Brimstone Sluggers. They never signed anything. They never signed to a record label or anything. But they did some production work. Black Eyed Peas, they did some production work for him. Early 1999 is when they formed Koreatown. So the first album was called The Gift of Game. Like I said, it wasn't huge when it came out. But then Butterfly was released. And Butterfly was a huge, huge hit. Now, Koreatown, they did not last long. They had a second album. It was called Darkhorse. It did not sell that well, and they split up after that. But then they got back together. And they did various shows, reunions throughout the past few years. I'm not sure if it's due to Seth's addiction issues or what, but if you look at the list on Wikipedia of their past band members in Koreatown, it's a long list. I was shocked. And normally I don't get my information from Wikipedia because I like to source, go to various sources on the internet. Britannica's a good one. FM, I think, is another one I use. But I was looking at Wikipedia about the history of Koreatown, and I couldn't believe how many band members there were. But even just recently, a video went around of him having a fight backstage. Seth and one of the band members having a fight, like a physical fight backstage, which is brutal to watch. It was uploaded, I believe, to Facebook, and he's just fighting backstage. They're older. Seth seems to be going through some things in the video, like he was late for a show, didn't show up, and he was mad he wasn't getting paid, but then they made up afterwards. I know that. Now, here's the part about Seth that is sad. He had a very, very, very heavy drug addiction. He struggled with substance abuse for a very long time. He was on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew. He was on 2 seasons of a show called Sober House, which I wasn't familiar with. And he got clean, then relapsed. Got clean, then relapsed. And it was just kind of not just a daily struggle, from what I can tell. It was an hourly struggle. It was moment by moment. Dr. Drew, I read a whole bunch of stuff about him and Dr. Drew. He tried really hard to help Seth. And he had a sober coach that tried to help him, but he was struggling big time. So that show, Celebrity Rehab, I should say that he was actually in the first season of Celebrity Rehab, which was on VH1. And he graduated from treatment with the other cast members. But like I said, his sobriety was short-lived. Then he appeared briefly towards the end of Celebrity Rehab 2. And I believe it was in that one, Dr. Drew and Seth's sponsor retrieved him from a hotel room where he'd been using drugs, and they brought him to a recovery center in Pasadena, PRC, Pasadena Recovery Center. So the house is right across the street. I'm gonna see how I'm gonna be able to film it because there are people outside. So now I'm gonna tell a little story about what happened to Seth before he passed away. This is around 2008 when he was doing Celebrity Rehab presents Sober House. He walked out of the production and into a heavy relapse after he felt insulted at the club. This information I'm getting from Wikipedia. William Smith, an employee of Dr. Drew, eventually sought out Seth at a motel and brought him back to the rehab facility. And an embarrassed Seth, Shifty Shellshock, pledged to them that the binge he embarked on was going to be his last, that he was done with drugs. On the show's final episode, he's shown in the preliminary stages of being signed to a record producer for a new song, and he says he's going to stay sober. Now, there's a show called Loveline that Dr. Drew did because, but there's a show called Loveline that he did. And Dr. Drew gave an emotional eulogy to a friend of Seth's, DJ AM. Now, if you're not familiar with DJ AM was a huge celebrity DJ, but he was also in Koreatown. And I forgot about this. Wow. But DJ AM was famous for dating Nicole Richie. He was in that plane crash with Travis Barker from Blink-182. Walked away from it while he was hurt. But DJ AM tragically had an accidental drug overdose after 11 years of being sober. And during the tribute, Dr. Drew mentioned that Seth's problems with addiction continued after Sober House 1. eventually leading him to take part in Sober House Part 2. And then when filming for Sober House Part 2 began, Dr. Drew got a distress call from Seth Binzer. The two met, with Seth revealing to Drew that his thirst for drugs was still very much alive and that he needed more help. Dr. Drew reluctantly apparently agreed to let him take part in the show, and firmly stated it was the last time that he would help him. Now, Dr. Drew voiced his hope that Goldstein's death, that's DJ AM, would inspire Binzer to remain sober. So it was June 24th, 2024, when Seth Binzer died at this home right in front of us here in Los Angeles from an accidental overdose of cocaine, fentanyl, and methamphetamine. He was only 49 years old. Now, a lot of the reports you read about Seth, about him passing away, it said that he died at his home. This was not his home. This was not his house, this one right here. This was not his home. It was a place he was staying. Now, the story goes about his final days, is that he was on a bender. And he was here because he had told somebody else that was living in the house that he had been fighting with his girlfriend and that he had to come and stay here, and he found this room available. That the cops were at his other house, they were there back and forth, and he had to get away. Apparently he was only here for 5 days. I'm going to show you some pictures of what it looks like inside. But it was on the top floor, and yeah, here's some of the pictures I was able to find. There's a lighter, medications, Narcan, which is something that's used to reverse opioid overdoses. Apparently he had some females visiting him. I don't know. This is what I've read. It was an article out of the UK that I read. And then Monday, June 24th, I believe it was in the morning, my 911 call was made. Possible cardiac arrest and overdose. And the property manager was the one who found him unconscious on the mattress, which was laid out on the floor. So they did find paraphernalia, a lighter near him, and he was already gone by the time they were here. An autopsy was conducted. And so as for where his grave is, he does not have a grave. His body was cremated, and ashes are with family members. So the people that were there are no longer there. I can't see really, but I believe, so it was the top floor, and I believe the window that you see at the very top there, I believe that was where Seth was renting. It was a top floor with one window that was covered. I'm gonna go take a look on the other side and see if that one is covered, but from the picture I was able to match up, it was that I found online of the room, it looks like it's that window there. It was one window by itself, and it's got some little indentations above. So I believe that's Seth's apartment there, or was for 5 days, I should say. Yeah, just from looking at the other side, it doesn't look like it's on that side. The windows don't match up to the pictures that I saw online. Let's see if I can show you. It's hard to get there's a lot of traffic in this area going around, so it's hard to kind of get the shots I want to get. We're gonna walk over there now. So yeah, a lot of people think that he passed away at his house, but it was not at his house. It was this one here, and this was not the house he owned. So that's just something, it's an interesting looking house. Very, very funky. But this is it. Very, very sad. Very, very interesting looking homes right along this here stretch here. But yeah, I believe that's the window that is right there. So that's roughly the story of Seth's life. Not only the way I said that. There's the house there. I'm not saying his life was about drugs. He did struggle heavily, and that's a good 25 years I know of that he struggled with drugs. It seems to be. And I know sometimes people, when they hear about people that die from drug overdoses and, you know, when they're using street drugs or prescription drugs. People say, well, they brought it on themselves, that sort of thing. There's not a lot of... I have a different view. I find it very sad. Addiction, I find it very, you know, it can happen to the best of us. And it's a lot easier to have empathy. It's a lot easier to feel, sad to say, that's too bad. Even if you don't have much of a, you know, even if you're, I guess, you know, you don't believe addiction is, what the hell am I trying to say? There's some people that write in the comments sometimes, when I've done videos about people who died of addiction, and say, well, it's their own fault. I don't believe that. Addiction is a disease, and I feel that instead of judging the people and saying that sort of thing, why not just be, you don't have to be fully, you know. I think what I'm trying to say is, when people write in my comments and stuff about, you know, if I've done stuff about people who die from addiction and things like that, overdoses, say, well, they brought it on themselves, that sort of thing. I don't agree, but I think you know, it's a lot easier just to have empathy and feel, and even if you don't really feel it, just to say, that's too bad. How about that? And then if you do feel empathy for the person, share it, and because addiction it's a tough thing, and we all know somebody who probably has an addiction. We all do, and we have a loved one. You know what I mean? So Seth had a lot of loved ones, I'm sure. A lot of people care for him, and his problems spiraled out of control. I'm sure, it seems like a lot of people tried to help him, and it's tragic and it's sad. And he was very talented. They had one hit, really, but the albums, I've listened to both of them. They're good albums. He had talent, and it's 49 is too young. And also, somebody once said, I forget who it was, an artist, rather be a one-hit wonder than a no-hit wonder. I agree with that. You know what? If he's only known for Butterfly, if the band only is, well, that's pretty cool. That's a big song. That's a huge hit. It's a great song. It was everywhere. You know it. Come, my lady, come, my lady. You're my butterfly, sugar, baby. Shouldn't do that. I shouldn't sing, but that's how it goes. Thank you for watching, everybody. Rest in peace, Seth. Shifty Shellshock. I think I said everything I want to say. I talked about DJ AM. I talked about his form. I talked about Dr. Drew. He was dating Soleil Moonfry at one point, Punky Brewster, just a couple of years ago. And yeah, here's the house. Unbelievable. Rest in peace, and I hope your family and friends are coping. Hasn't been that long since it happened. Rest in peace, Seth. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's a great song, and listen to the album. The album is not like Butterfly. The album is a little harder, and it's got some great songs on it. So take a listen. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.